Hello, I'm James from Borussia Dortmund English, and this is the Echte Liebe podcast. I'd like to welcome you all to episode number 2, where I'll be looking back at the game against RB Leipzig. But before that, I'd like to tell you that the mood may drop on the next part of the show. The reason why, you may ask? Well, I'm recording this on Tuesday the 7th of March. That's right, this is the morning of the Champions League second leg tie against Chelsea. With my limited time, this is going to be a common theme where I record one part of the show, which will cover the most recent game, but then I will record the next part either before or straight after the following game. So, a little warning, if the mood drops after this part, then you will know why. The build-up to the Leipzig game was certainly a fun one, and you can't blame BVB fans for being excited and making it fun because we're on a 9-game winning streak. Something that some of the best squads in football history haven't even been able to achieve. But with that, we also know that it would be ending at some point. And I'll be completely honest with you, I was genuinely worried that it would be against them. That worry was then compounded even further after I'd shared the team news on the Facebook and Twitter pages. A few of you were commenting with Gregor Kobel's name, but I didn't understand why. And so I genuinely at first thought that I'd got the kickoff time wrong and that he'd already made a mistake in the game. But that wasn't the case. After double checking, I could see that Alexander Meyer had started and that Gregor Kobel had picked up a muscle injury. That was it for me. I'd already had my doubts, but now this. I was worried. But in the end, I think it may have worked out in our favour. And what I mean by that is that it was such short notice that none of us could really get caught up in the disappointment. If we'd had a week of knowing that Meyer was going to play and that Kobel would have missed the match, I think the mindset amongst both the players and the fans would have changed. And if we'd gone on to lose that game, Meyer would have been the easy excuse, wouldn't he? Yet, even with that change and losing the best goalkeeper in the Bundesliga, I think we'd all agree that we absolutely took Marco Rosa's side to pieces. Julian Brandt was again exceptional and was extremely unlucky to have his goal ruled out by VAR. And with that, in that moment, and at that point, with my worries before kickoff and the change in goal, the disallowed goal, I had that feeling of here we go again. But I couldn't have been more wrong. The Royce penalty and his 159th goal for BVB set us on our way. And coincidentally, it tied him as Borussia Dortmund's second highest goal scorer alongside Michael Zorc. Less than 20 minutes later, a poorly cleared corner from Leipzig dropped to the revitalised Emre Can, who struck his shot into the ground, and with a deflection or two, it eventually found itself nestling in the roof of the net. We were flying, and I honestly thought we'd go on to give them an absolute hammering. There were some negatives, one being Alexander Meyer and, well, his nervousness. That was shown by having the ball blocked when taking too long to clear it, and it's understandable. It's the biggest game of the season and he's been thrown in at the deep end with probably around 30 minutes notice. Other than that, I think the only other disappointment would be that we weren't 3 or 4 goals to the good. But being at home against Leipzig, with our previous record in the last few games against them, going for our 10th win in a row, what more could we ask for? As so often is the case in football, many games are a tale of two halves, and no more so than this one. Most of us would agree that we were never going to be able to play at the tempo and pace that we did in the first half, but I'd go on to say that it was a little worse than that if I'm honest, because we really let them get back into the game. And now, look, no matter what you think about Leipzig not being a traditionally ran German club, they're not liked by anybody in Germany, but if you look on the field and the way that they conduct their business in terms of their playing staff, it's nothing short of fantastic. And this is a team that in the last 3 games had beaten Wolfsburg away, and convincingly 3-0. They drew with Man City 1-1 in the Champions League, and then beaten Frankfurt 2-1 at home. Emil Forsberg has been in unbelievable form, as has Dominik Szoboszlai, and it's a team with the likes of Nkunku, Timo Werner and Andre Silva. So it's hard sometimes as we can, or at least I can, be very critical. But with their form and their quality, to hold them to 1 goal and see it out and win was unbelievable. probably even more unbelievable if you managed to see the 93rd minute clearance by Schlotterbeck. With the flick of his shoulder, that was as good as any last-minute match-winning goal. His celebration said it all. He'd just won the game for BVB, and in doing so, secured our 10th win in a row. But as with any successful team that's flying in all competitions, the dust settles and you look straight ahead at the next game. Speaking of which, as I said earlier, I'm recording this on the morning of the Chelsea game. And the only news we have is that there is no news. It's clear that Gregor Kobo has travelled with the squad to London, but the club aren't releasing any details as to whether he's eligible to play or not. I'm going to put my neck on the line and I'm saying I think that he will. Other than that, it looks as though Moukoko is still out, along with Adeyemi, so I wouldn't expect too many changes to the squad as a whole. But whoever plays, I think they'll understand that the first 30 minutes are going to be crucial. Chelsea are going to go for an early goal. They need to get the crowd behind them, so if we can ride out that first 30 minutes or so, I think that will be a huge factor in determining this tie. We know that the simple and easiest way to get into the last 8 of the Champions League would be with a clean sheet. We've kept 3 in our last 3 away matches in the Bundesliga. But again, things are rarely ever that simple. I hope you all enjoy the game tonight, and I will see you all in the morning ready to talk about whether Edin Terzic's wish of becoming one of the best 8 teams in Europe comes to fruition or not. Well, that was a less than suspenseful few seconds of the episode, and I'm only recording this after we've exited the Champions League. Unfortunately, Edin Terzic's wish of becoming one of the best 8 teams in Europe hasn't happened, but on the night it wasn't as cut and dry. Okay, before I start, I'll admit that we were very poor. The energy that we've seen over the last couple of months just didn't seem to be there, and I'm sure that Edin and his staff will be doing everything in their power to find out why that was the case. We've had a very hard schedule, from the league to both domestic and European Cup competitions, and it could just be a case of tiredness, legginess, or quite simply, we just weren't good enough. It's clear that we had a game plan in the first leg, and we executed it to the T. But this issue going into the second leg, and the main problem, was that we lacked the raw pace on the break. And that was evident all game. Not having Adeyemi available, or Moukoko for that matter, meant that we were going to have to create more centrally. Our creative players, namely Julian Brandt, were going to be pivotal, but his night ended less than 4 minutes into the game. The long-term impact that's going to have on us isn't evident yet, but in the game it meant we fell very flat at times, and we just couldn't keep hold of the ball in the Chelsea half. It just kept coming back to us. We did have a fantastic opportunity that fell to Bellingham, but unfortunately he did what seemed to be the hardest thing to do as he put it wide of Kepa's post. So, a bad night all round, I'm sure you'll agree. Both individually and collectively. But even then, it took a retaken, dubious penalty to knock us out of the competition. And this is where I talk about someone else having a bad night. And that's the referee. For the most part, his night and the major decisions he had to make were impacted by VAR. And the bottom line is that they got it wrong. Now, I've sat and discussed, even argued with people on the Borussia Dortmund English page about whether it was the right decision or not, and even with the use of kicker and football rule experts backing up what I'm saying, some still seem to think that the retake was the correct call. This isn't about interpretation of rules. Simply, was there encroachment? Yes. Even though there were 3 Chelsea players in the area before any Dortmund players, makes it irrelevant. Therefore, no matter what, if the referee had seen it, then it's a retake. But we have to ask when VAR can intervene on these matters. The exact letter of the law is that if encroachment has occurred, then the defending player must have stopped an attacking player from scoring or possibly scoring, something that Salih Özcan did not do, because when he cleared it, there was no one near him. Therefore, VAR should not have intervened, and therefore, the penalty should not have been retaken. I'm not interested in interpretations. That is in black and white, unfortunately, and overall I feel that we were very hard done by. I'll be the first to admit, on the night, we just weren't good enough and Chelsea's game plan worked brilliantly. It was a frustrating and disappointing game and way to bow out of the competition. But with us being so successful at the minute, the games are still coming thick and fast. And we now have one of the biggest games of the season, which is something I feel like I'm saying every week, against Schalke, away in Gelsenkirchen, for the Revierderby. If you have managed to get this far in the show, then I'd like to say a huge thank you. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button, and if you want to support the show, you can become a Borussia Dortmund English member via the Patreon page, and this really does make a huge difference. I'll put all of the links below, but for now, we have a huge game to look forward to. I'll see you on the pages over the next week. Take care everyone, and thank you again for tuning in to the Echte Liebe podcast.